Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents with me, your host Valerie, and sometime co-host Miss Purrington. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. We bring you articles and podcasts featuring the best in Austin comedy in all its shapes and formats. Launched in 2016, the podcast project brings you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations, and will usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin comedy scene one of the best in the country. Today, I sit down with the founder of the Bubble and Squeak Showcase, one of the original founders of the Fierce Mild Open Mic, also Double Barrel Showcase, every possible showcase that I could see he's been on. He has co-hosted Leading the Blind and Circling the Drain podcasts, and he is a 3-time attempter and semifinalist of Austin's FPIA, which is a pretty cool credential and accomplishment, and hopefully he's going to get past that that level. And something that is very much part of his persona on stage. We talked ahead because I wasn't sure if I was going to say this in this introduction, but it is such a part of his personality, it is so much of who he is and who he presents on stage. He is a gay Iraq war veteran. And well, one thing that I know from listening to one of his past podcasts is he loves to ramble. So brace yourself for a fun ride today. Comedy Wham presents our guest, Jered McCorkle.
Hello.
Hi.
That was all very sweet. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I gotta, when did we schedule this? Like 2 weeks ago? Cause I ran into you and
something like that.
I was looking at who I was going to tag up, to interview in the near future. And I see you everywhere. And I'm like, oh my God, I've never sat down with Jered. This is such an oversight.
Oh, I'm glad you got to me.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is like the podcast of record of Austin comedy. So it's good to be here.
It's kind of fun to think that, in 3 years of the accumulation of people that I've talked to and where they've gone, cause for example, the comedy drama of Austin of the week has to do with a show that just passed through as part of a royalty tour that was composed of 4 really great Austin comedy alumnus.
They're all fantastic.
And they're in LA and New York, and they're achieving great things in those cities. And I talked to them. They were among my first guests.
Yeah.
And it's kind of wild to go back and listen.
Do you know how wonderful it is for me, by the way, to see that kind of drama and not be at the epicenter of it?
That's right, because you have been.
Plenty.
Oh, you
I have.
have.
Internet stepped on it a number of times. I actually got one of my very good friends in comedy and in life, Michael Good, at some point, almost intervened. He messaged me and he was like, look, you're really funny, but this is not helping you. You need to stop. And I was like, when you have friends who are concerned about your online presence, he's like, you have to take accountability. So I was like, I'm just going to stop fighting with people on the internet. But so.
And 2019, somebody pointed out there's already been 3 Austin comedy drama things that have happened. It's like, oh my gosh.
It's just bound to happen, I think, with
the growth.
Strong, and just, it's like the personalities involved in comedy. It's people who are, willing to be, I think, not necessarily offensive. That's not the right word. It's like, they're just going to conflict. It's a lot of strong personalities. So if anything, I'm more amazed it doesn't happen way more often. Or whatever. Yeah.
And one of the things that comes up on this podcast from time to time is the fact that, or the question of, is Austin too nice of a comedy scene?
Sure.
And maybe this is a hint of, we're aging into and we're growing into a much larger scene, and that's obvious by anybody who's been watching the scene for 6+ years.
I also think, I don't know if we're nice. I think we're passive aggressive a lot.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So it's like there's every bit, and not that we're worse at all. But I think that people are less likely to say to you, especially now, say to you, you suck, or stop doing this, or, F you, or whatever. But, there's about 100, Facebook groups
Yeah.
That you're probably not on 75 of them or whatever. And people are going to criticize you that way. So yeah.
Well, this is an early detour, so let's get back to my format, which is, because you've admitted that you've been listening.
I've cheated so hard.
Let's see how you deal with my icebreaker question. One word to describe your past.
I feel bad because I thought about it. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people are like, one word. It's like, so I've gone in my head through several iterations of it. But I'm going to say, I think my word's going to be conflicted. I think that's going to be my word.
Right.
And I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit. But just always kind of at odds with myself a little bit. Like, and not even like internal conflict, just like, I'm this kind of person who's not the way they're supposed to be, or that kind of whether it's the gay thing or just being really pretentious. That's happened less now, but like when I was a kid, I was definitely I want to be smarter than everybody else, and so do that in rural Georgia and see how that goes.
Okay, so that's one of my next questions. Is that's rural Georgia?
That's an exaggeration. I'd say like quasi-rural suburb Georgia. Yeah.
All right. It's like being out here.
Yeah. Actually, this is pretty similar. Yeah. Augusta, Georgia.
Okay. Actually. Well, that's golf course land, right?
Absolutely.
Speaking of pretentious.
Absolutely.
That's the Masters, right?
That's the Masters.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a bunch of golf out there. But I mean, the weird thing about that is a very class oriented thing because that's what puts us on the map is the Augusta National Golf tournament. And you can't see it if you're there because it's a country club.
Oh, yeah.
So you can't, there's these huge fences or something like that. It would be like if we had the Statue of Liberty, but there's a giant tarp on it and you had to be rich to see under that tarp or something like that. Yeah.
Do you have any early comedic memories, things that you observed or you were a part of?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I don't know if it's how I got into comedy because it took me a while before I was like, I thought I could be a comic. And that was way later. But in Blockbuster Video, it was actually not Blockbuster, but a similar video store, the kids section, the kids VHS tapes were right next to the stand-up comedy section, just how they organized it, because it's a very miscellaneous thing. And I, to this day, don't know why I get my dad to rent me a George Carlin VHS.
Oh my gosh. How old were you?
So I'm 10.
Okay.
Somewhere in that department. And I don't know, I think maybe it could have been an accident, like the tapes got switched or, cause I don't know what would have attracted me. I don't have a vivid memory of this, but, I took it home and I was mesmerized. This was, I think, Jammin' in New York. I think it's about early 90s, like 91 tape recording or whatever. And it's one of his it's the special, or at least one of the two, where he kind of reinvented himself and he was in, black and had the long gray ponytail and had a kind of nihilism. I mean, that's probably too strong a word, but there's that sort of thing. And I take that home and I, like I said, mesmerized and just kept watching George Carlin. I'd rented all of his stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm not even pubescent yet. And my dad thought it was such a funny, cute novelty. And I don't think he was really paying attention to the comedy.
Clearly not.
I think he knew there was cursing, but I don't think he understood the sort of philosophical vein in it or what have you. But George Carlin was on tour and I was 12. So it's been a 2-year fan of George Carlin. It's like, okay, sticking with this. He must really like this comic. My dad got us tickets to see George Carlin.
Oh my gosh.
And it just had this tremendous effect on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
George Carlin comes up all the time, obviously.
I can imagine.
I'm going to skip way ahead and ask, so do you, because of that very prominent and strong influence, do you find a lot of your comedy is modeled or influenced?
So here's the crazy thing. I think, because I listened to George Carlin, I mean, and still do, I mean, but well before I even thought about stand-up as a genre. To me, he was this guy that thought weird. and interesting. And I think I developed in a way through that. Like I didn't think this is how you be a comic. I was like, this is how you be a person.
Yeah.
This is how you think about the world.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think I wanted to still, I think when you look at the way he does comedy, it's relatively difficult to do. Mm-hmm. There aren't a lot of what you'd think of as like hard jokes in it. They exist, but they're not, it's really, he'll kind of make a interesting, observation, and he usually embodies it with a character. And he has such skill in terms of voice and inflection and all this kind of stuff. And the funny thing is, like, when I started doing comedy, I wanted to be like that. But you don't necessarily end up being like, your intention. You have to figure out how you can be funny and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So what kind of performance or stage stuff did you do up until that first time on stage as a
almost nothing, really. Like I had, I think,
what did you want to be when you grew up?
For so many different things. I mean, like I wanted to be whatever got me attention when I said it to adults. Oh, God. Like I think at one point I said I wanted to be an archaeologist, no interest. It was just I was like 10 or something like that, just a big word.
Yeah.
Or whatever. At some point I settled on writer because that felt like a general imaginative kind of thing. But I wasn't writing a lot. I mean, even up into like adulthood or whatever. But yeah, I mean, all my friends were funny growing up. We were all funny. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until almost I got out of the army, somewhere in there. So I'm like 24 that I began thinking about maybe I could be a comic. Maybe that's a thing. And even then I had no idea how to do it, but I was like, maybe I could be that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You finished school, and then what? Tell me about when the whole Iraq.
It's got a weird timeline here. So I am going to high school or whatever, and I hate to blame it all on being gay or whatever, but I wasn't out of the closet. I was actually out of the closet to friends and stuff like that, but I wasn't out of the closet to my parents and stuff like that. And I really was kind of conflicted as a person. And so not paying attention to high school at all. And I think that happens with a lot of queer kids or anybody that maybe has a kind of inability to integrate with their surroundings or whatever. I'm not paying attention to school. I'm just constantly anxious. So 4 years in high school, I'm a sophomore. And so I'm like, yeah, we're done. There's no reason to think this is going to go well. I drop out of school with my parents' permission, saying, let me go take the GED, go to the local community college, and we might as well, right? Because there's no way I'm getting into a good school now. Let's just kind of do the reset button.
Okay.
That happens. And then as I'm going to school, I'm like, oh, this isn't going well either. And so around about that time, 9/11 happens.
Okay.
And so I'm maybe the perfect candidate for a soldier at that point. Mm-hmm. I don't even have any tremendous intention. And I was the kid when I told people I was going to join the military. They were like, you're going to do that? No, come on. You're lying to me. I had people that said no, you're not.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But yeah, so I didn't. I had destroyed my academic career for a while. I mean, they don't tell kids that just wait 2 years and try again and you'd be fine. Mm-hmm. But there's a feeling I've got to do something.
It's now or never.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm never going to leave this awful town. Mm-hmm. Which I love where I'm from now. At the time, I was just this is the most boring place I could imagine. I have to leave somehow.
Growing up in Augusta, did you go on vacations? Did you explore the world at all?
We went on redneck vacations. So we went to Myrtle Beach a lot. Which again, as a kid, I loved, but it's just the same, dismal redneckery on the coast, but yeah. But no, I didn't. I don't think I wasn't particularly well traveled, and I will say most of my friends growing up were the kids of military, military brats. We had a base that didn't really affect Augusta that much. It's Fort Gordon is out there only because Augusta is a relatively large size town and the base is relatively small as military bases go.
Okay.
But, people would be stationed there, they'd have kids, and those are I don't know why, but I just kind of got along better with kids that weren't from maybe the South. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah. And it could have just been coincidence or whatever, but yeah.
So your you're going to sign up. You're signing up.
Yeah, and then the other thing, and if you're curious why people join the military at all, because I always hear it's like college money or something like that, or patriotism, or what it is I think status, prestige, because you go from being an 18-year-old loser, and I was kind of objectively that, to, if I sign this piece of paper, I'll be like a hero.
Yeah.
Everybody will respect me instantly, and
especially in that time.
Yeah, and absolutely. But I'll get squared away because I have no discipline. And again, a lot of this, like, I track back to I was conflicted about being gay and not knowing how to integrate that. But I can't do homework, I can't get any work done. I'll do this, it'll create discipline, and I'll show people what gay people can really do, which sounds awful now because like we can invade a country, but that's But the idea, I think, is that I knew I was gay, and I was really fine with that. In terms of, I didn't feel bad about being attracted to guys. I didn't like the idea that I was torn between people who were saying like, you shouldn't be gay because it's bad, and you should be this kind of person, versus people who were saying, oh, you're gay, and that means you should be interested in these things, you should like these things, you should have this personality, and it's more like, hey, I like hunting. Which this is the kind of exaggeration, but I'm just saying, like, so the military was a way to kind of try to figure that out. Yeah. Yeah.
How old were you?
In the military, or when I joined?
When you joined?
19, and I just turned 19. Okay. So I was June 26th, 2002.
I'm struck by something that you said, because part of me wants to say, I think it would be unusual for somebody that's still a teenager to have the presence of mind to know this about themselves, because they're still teenagers. They're still learning how life works and who they are. But the fact that you said, I'll get some discipline. Yeah. Because you've tried these traditional routes. You tried high school. Yeah. But you found a way out, and then you tried the community college, and that wasn't working. Oh,
I was really adamant about, with my parents, like, there's something wrong. I need help. And I think because I couldn't tell them I was gay, and because I wasn't, I didn't know how to explain. I mean, at the time, I didn't really understand the nature of this kind of stuff. But I was like, look, I know I need to do homework. I know I need to pay attention to school, but I don't have the ability to kind of marshal my work ethic towards it or whatever. Yeah. And I wanted to go to therapy, and they finally took me. And the really funny thing is that, like, the therapist, after like 3 sessions, was like, I don't know, she's like some weird whisperer person, but she was like, do you ever worry that you might be gay? And I was like, well, we'll never speak again, so thanks a lot, I gotta leave now.
Were you worried she was going to talk to your parents?
I think that was when I realized not when I realized I was gay, but like when I was like, oh, other people know this is real. It's like that was the moment where it was the difference between just feelings versus if this person who's trained in understanding people can see something in me, it's got to be sort of objective or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, so this is where, I know I told you I don't like to lead. I'll go wherever my guests will take me. But this is where I take particular interest, because I'm a parent. And
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a long time.
If this was stand up, you'd say that.
Yeah, right. And I recently somebody made an observation to me, and because I asked for help, and I'm not very good at asking for help. And somebody wrote me and said, look, I'm not going to do what you just asked for because it makes me uncomfortable. I hate it. And I bet you the person that you're asking. So I was asking for people to do something for my son. And this person said, and I bet you it's 100 times worse, for the people getting this thing that you're asking for people to do. And I found myself saying, I am this person's parent. I know them the absolute best of anybody else in the world. And if I'm asking for help, if I'm saying, this, of all of the things I could have possibly asked for people to do, this is the one thing that I think my child would benefit from.
Sure.
I've identified it based on my deep expertise in it. So all of that to say is, you said you weren't out to your parents.
Yeah.
But do you think, when you did come out to them, did they say, "Oh yeah, we knew"?
No. It was quite the opposite.
So you really kept it.
To the point where I was like, well, I think one, and it came out to my mom and she didn't want to believe it, but she took it well, but she sort of like, I was older. I was like 23. I was in the military when I came out. And she just couldn't integrate her ideas of me and the idea of what a gay person was. And I was like, look, there are two possibilities here.
Yeah.
One is that you're right about me. In other words, you're saying I'm straight. And the other thing, other possibility is you're just wrong about what gay people are like. And I was like, well, I can tell you one is definitely true. Yeah. I know I'm gay. So, but actually coming out later, as painful as it was to keep that a secret for as long as it was, when I came out, it was easier because I could sort of come from a position of kind of authority. Be like, look, this isn't a phase. Yeah. It's like I've been gay almost as long as I've been. I don't want to say as long as they've known me because I don't know if a 2-year-old's gay, but you know what I mean. Sure. But yeah, so it was. Yeah, I think it was hard and my dad. Like, well, I went home ready to fight him about it. Like I was like, because it was like a mystery. I didn't know I was going to take it or whatever. But he was kind of okay with it. They need time to like mourn the death of their grandchildren a little bit. Not that you can't, but that's the first thought that I think my mom had was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
See, that's my fear is that, with this self confidence that I know my child the best, that I could actually be wrong.
I think that the reason that you could be wrong, it's like my mom and I were very close and I didn't tell her because among other things, I didn't want to worry her. Yeah. So there is a thing, I'm sure you understand this, and the older that kids get, I think the more aware they are of how, in some sense, they affect their parents' feelings a great deal. Yeah. And so it's certainly possible that they could, to try to help you or protect you, not tell you something. Now, I obviously have no idea the details, but right. Yeah.
Okay. So back to you. We're done therapizing me, my angst as a parent. But I think we got good insight about, what was happening in your mind, and the coming out experience for you. At the time, so if 9/11, we're talking 2001, when did you
And I want to be clear, I didn't have anything to do with that.
Thank you for
I don't know if anybody there was tension about that.
Because this is a recorded podcast, which will be released, so it's good
posterity.
For you to, how soon after that did you enlist?
Really quickly. That happened, and then, so like I said, that was obviously September 2001, and I joined June 2002.
Okay,
so not even a year, but so I joined this will be a good timeline, between declaring war in Afghanistan and declaring war in Iraq.
Okay.
So we had not yet declared war on Iraq when I enlisted.
All right.
Yeah.
So what's going on in your brain as far as this is how I can get discipline? I'm not out to some of my important people. And this is still in the don't ask, don't tell.
Absolutely. Yeah. But so here's the thing. I had been in the closet for a long time. And again, all my friends sort of knew I was gay, and we talked about that. And I dated some guys in high school and stuff like that. But in terms of not that I had any kind of public persona, but in terms of my parents and my family, I had been, closeted. So going in the military and just not telling authority wasn't anything new to me. Yeah. And then the other thing about it, when I joined the Army, and I did this thing called the 18 X-ray program, which is a kind of intensive from enlistment pipeline. Okay. Where you're trying to get into the special forces. And it's really like a kind of attempt at the special forces. So you go through basic training and then infantry AIT and then airborne school and then courses that prepare you for the special forces Q course. I say all that to say that once you get on that roller coaster, that's the only thing you think about. So, I wasn't having that experience like, oh, I'm secretly gay. No one could know. Every once in a while that would come up in my head or something like that. But for the most part, you're just hyper focused on this kind of stuff. Yeah. And in the meantime, in the backdrop, there's a war that's brewing. or whatever. And it was a weird time because like when we were going, almost no one had been a combat veteran. Like there were people who went to Grenada or Panama for very short sort of things. So, and we knew everybody was going, to see combat. I mean, not necessarily see combat, but you know what I mean? Go to the theater of war.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was that.
So you got your discipline, like,
in a
intensely.
sense, I mean, you get certain kinds of discipline. You get kind of muscle memory level discipline. So you get, but you can be very childish in the military.
Yeah.
I think more than anything, what I got was a structured environment where I couldn't deviate that much. And then by the time I got out of the military, then I was also just older.
Yeah.
And it ingrains in you certain things like, well, of course I'm going to do my laundry. Or of course, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. Which, my boyfriend's listening to this and like, yeah, you never do that. But what I mean is that, as opposed to.
You understood the value of doing it yourself.
Yeah, and it also isn't so daunting. Like I said, I grew up with, no structure at all, which was great in certain respects, but bad in other respects.
Sure.
So if nobody really makes you do the laundry, or teaches you, like, this is it, you sit down and you do your homework. That stuff all seems deeply, you feel very impotent to even begin to scratch the surface of it, even though it's really mundane stuff. Whereas now, and after going to the military, it's not that you become a steely-willed person. It's just like, oh, those are insignificant tasks. Yeah. Of course I'm going to do them. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
So how much time were you in the military?
I was in there for 5 years.
Okay. And is that, I have no sense
that's
of,
that's a long because time, it was that special forces program, you had to enlist for 5 or 6 years. Okay. Which is way longer than usual for a first enlistment. Usually it's 3 or 4 years of active duty. That's how they do it.
All right.
Yeah. So I got out.
And is that what happened is you were like, I'm done?
In a way, I mean, yes, yeah, absolutely. And now when I look back on it, I made the right decision to leave, but I don't hate it nearly as, and I shouldn't even say I hated it then, but I was at that time very ready to leave. I had, I used to joke that like when I was in Iraq, I was in so many IEDs, I thought they didn't like me personally. I was in one really bad one, and then you have to do, that was like halfway, into our deployment in Iraq. And I was like, well, we have to keep doing this. Like, we have more missions and you just have to keep doing it. But after a while, you're like, I think I will eventually die. You know what I mean? Like, so I was like, I don't. And then the other thing about it is that at some level, there are two kinds of successful soldiers. There are, I shouldn't say two successful ones. There are two kinds of soldiers. There's, individualistic soldiers, and then there are successful ones. That's how I should say it. So, I was kind of just ready to figure out who I was outside of that. The military in some ways did fix me, I have to say. I would not be capable, I think, of living a life on my own. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Sure. Okay. Well, I feel like we've really dug into these two things, but to me, it was important to do it because it is so much of what you articulate on stage.
Sure, yeah. Unfortunately, at some level, I'm not ashamed, but I talk about those two things. And now way more of the gay stuff than the veteran stuff. I just, talk about it way more than I want to. But it's just like, and I even as a comic feel guilty. Like, I don't want to just be writing gay jokes. Yeah. And I don't only have gay jokes. Just so, for the listener.
He does not.
but there's a sense where it's like I had, 25 years to collect ironies about my personality and my orientation and also the way the world's changed relative to what that was. So in some sense, it's like I just have that stuff and I don't want to, if I can think of a funny thing, I'm going to do it on stage. Yeah. I'm so glad you used that phrase. You've collected ironies over the last 25 years because I've been unable to get out very much over the last, since school started. Sure. And that means I haven't seen you perform in a while, as with many of the other comics. And I got to see you on a great, Sure Thing showcase. Oh, yeah. And, I see you at the open mics when I go and we're working out. Nobody brings their best and brightest to the open mics. But when I saw you at that showcase, I'm like,
oh my God, he is so good at the turn and at that irony, you know, bringing that irony to us. And I was just like, okay, this is really, really laying it on thick. Yeah. But it was like melt in your mouth buttery good. Like just you're taking us along and then you do this turn.
That's
and I'm
really
like,
sweet.
He's so good at this.
So I got, because I told you I wanted to be very much like George Carlin or the Bill Hicks or Louis C.K. I wanted to be those guys when I started doing comedy. And then I may have said this already, Liz, part of it, but then I kind of fell in love with jokes, which I did not know I was going to do. Didn't have that intention. I didn't like one-liner comics, and I shouldn't say I didn't like them. I just didn't. I appreciate them. You know, Stephen Wright, Mitch Hedberg is just. I never saw that and said I want to do that.
Yeah.
And to this day, I don't do one-liners necessarily, but I really got fascinated with the structure of like that kind of. You talk about that big turn, like the idea of misleading the audience into thinking you mean one thing and then showing them you meant something else.
Yeah.
I just think it's really good. I mean, at a technical level too, it increases the laughs and or at least the intensity of them. And I like to kind of show people the formula a bit.
Yeah.
Because I think that the structure requires the hard turn to get, I think, a really good laugh, but you also need tension.
Yeah.
And so it helps if, there's a lot of ways to produce that. I think it helps if you're talking about stuff where the audience thinks you might say something bad. I mean, because the thing is, I don't want to offend anybody, but I like in that tightrope sense that they think I might be about to. You know what I mean? And so that's fun.
Yes. Yeah. I will just leave peanut butter on the table. In anybody who's seen Jered's set, you know peanut butter. All right, let's now go back again.
Let's keep going back.
Your first time on a stage as a comic or as an open mic or however you want to think about it. What got you there?
Lot of stuff. Like I said, there were just moments along the way where I wanted to be a comic or thought it was a good idea or something like that. But I started going to school and I started paying a lot of attention to philosophy. I got obsessively interested in it. And it's similar to comedy in that, like, if your only sense of what philosophy is like is through, like, assholes on the internet, then you have people have a bad taste in their mouth because they think it's about a person who's trying to, like, you know, call them out in converse, like in an argument. It's like, that's begging the question. But doing it's not like that. So point being, I got really obsessed with that. After I got my degree, well, sort of the last semester, I should say, or I'm basically done with the degree, just rounding off. Austin Smart, I went to school with.
Okay.
She started doing open mics.
Okay.
So I'm like 2 weeks behind her. And
was this in Austin? In Austin, because I can't.
This is in Austin.
Talked to Austin, and okay, all right.
Austin mentions it in that episode that she started doing. Like I actually was there for her first open mic at Karuva Milk Bar, which was the name of the coffee shop at Southwestern or whatever. And I saw that and I was deeply jealous, but also like, it's great. And Austin legitimately had, I think for the first time, a good set, which was probably good for me to see. It was like, oh, you can not have done this before and kind of do it on stage. And then I don't know if she just wanted somebody to hang out with more, or we had talked about doing stand up before. And she was like, you know, I figured out how to do it. You should come along. So for about a week, I started following her to open mics. And I was like, I have to do this. But I couldn't bring myself to go on stage. And I was just like, I didn't really have jokes written or anything like that. And then we're at, what was it? Badlands, I think. So there's Beerland. But there was also Badlands. Okay. It's an open mic, hosted by Montgomery Wayne, actually. God rest his soul, as I say. And, you know, I'm just hanging out, just watching, and Adam Shoemate, I don't know if you're familiar with Adam. He's a comic. He doesn't go out as much, and I think does stuff in Dallas and with Bob Khosravi. They're really close friends or whatever. But, he was the last comic in this very ill-attended open mic. And by the way, I still think this is all magical. It's the comics are at a lower level and probably not that good, but I'm just he'd really taken with it and desperately want to do it. Well, he was waiting on another comic to show up. So he's going longer. He's stretching at an open mic, which is the dumbest thing anyone could ever do.
Yeah.
But he's going up there tap dancing, and I'm just deeply impressed. And he was like, well, look, and the person he was waiting for doesn't show up. He gets word from off stage, they're not coming. And he's like, well, I don't want to have stretched for no reason. I mean, he really was doing a lot of tap dancing. Or just like, there's a few new people in the audience, and he's like, when we say audience, I mean 5 or 6 people sitting on chairs. Yeah. That's the way. But he was like, does anybody want to do comedy if they've never done it before? Something to that effect. And I was like, I could. And I'm terrified. Yeah. It's like getting shot at. And he asked me to come up, and I like panicked, so I almost rushed the stage. I'm like, no, we got to say your name. Shut up. Like, sit down. We'll call you. So they call me up. I tell the first joke that I tell, first bit, gets a laugh. Way bigger the laugh than I thought it was going to. And then I did another thing, and it got nothing. And they clapped. It was very nice. Everybody in the room was really sweet to me. And it was like this tremendous weight just lifted off of my shoulders. I went back, I think between standing up there and walking back to my seat, I decided, I was like, oh, I'll be a comic till I'm dead. Okay, great.
Wow.
And it was fantastic. Yeah. And it was a little nice cap. That first joke that I did, this is completely random, is the joke that I won Joke of the Night for FBI.
Oh my gosh.
I just wrote this joke that, to me, and this is before I was even planning on doing comedy, it just like sounded like a bit, and it just kind of worked. And I don't know what would happen if I had just eaten nothing or eaten a bag of genitals or whatever, as they say.
You can't podcast on this podcast, Jered.
Yeah, I was trying not to, but like, it's like that Pandora's box once I open it. But I had a good experience, and it was like, oh, that's what it could be like. And that has like just,
Because as you know, I like to find out why somebody went back a second time more than why they went the first time.
But I do know
you got that instant validation.
And we've sort of talked about this before, not just you and I, but I mean, like, I think there's a running conversation, sort of debate about like, cause certainly people have a bad experience and go back, no question. Yeah. But I think a lot of people don't. And I often wonder how many amazing comics, or at least very solid comics, might have, if they had just gone back that second or third time, they'd realize that like you're not a natural from you know, because I bombed the second and third and fourth time, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, but the thing, what helps is if you have the one joke that works, then it's like, okay, I know what that sounds like, and you can kind of use it as a kind of barometer or litmus test for other jokes,
right?
You know, and so yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so you started in Austin. Did you have an idea that the Austin comedy scene? So take me back. Time.
Sure.
When was this? What year?
This is I think August 1st, 2015.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure because 2016 would have been my first FPIA.
Okay. So the Austin comedy scene at that point is rocking and rolling. It's a good scene.
I think it feels like it's less good now. A lot of that's just because I've been here for a minute, you know. But so it's so hard to tell if it's better or worse, but it at the time was fantastic. Yeah. Oh, Maggie May had just done her Conan set.
Okay.
And so that was incredibly sort of legitimizing because it was sort of like, oh, there's a comic here, and they just did a Conan set. And Maggie is amazing, no question. But there was also like 10 other comics who were in that kind of level. So it also didn't feel like, oh, she's the one good person.
Right.
And then I was seeing other people here who now I look at maybe a little bit closer to peers, but who I also like watch their comedy. I was just in love with. So yeah, that also helped me to want to stick it out because it felt real, you know.
So what did you learn about yourself in those first few months?
Man, that's interesting. I'm not likable.
Really?
No. I mean, only in this way, which is that, and I think this is really good for comics, or for anybody who does comedy, is that you learn like a lot of the people who have indulged your sense of humor, it's because they know you. And when you have a lot of time to like change first impressions. I mean, figuring out how to create a good impression, a good first impression is very important for an upcoming comic, I think. And it took me a while to figure that out. You know, one, I mean, I had what I used to call the 15% rule, which was, and this is before comedy, this is just like, I'm going to meet 15% of people, or of all the people I meet, 15% are not going to like me from the jump based on my personality, based on the things I like about myself and want to present. Okay. So don't fight for that 15. You're not going to get 100%. You just, or whatever. And then I realized maybe that's way more than that. Maybe it's 45 or whatever. So, you know, you just, I think that I learned that. And you just try to get better at that. Yeah. You know.
All right, so we'll go into a little therapy dive here for a moment, because I will say, as a longtime observer of the scene, I've been paying attention and going to shows since 2012. So I've seen that rise, and you know, I've grown to love and admire the Austin comedy scene.
Sure.
And
me too.
Me too. And I have a lot of Facebook friends that are the comics, and I will say that maybe in that first year or two of yours, seeing you online, I'm like, this is somebody who has a lot to learn. And at the time, I didn't know how old you were.
Yeah.
So I just thought, okay, well, he's just gonna publicly learn how to present yourself.
Absolutely.
Because on stage, you're funny, and I like you on stage.
Oh, yeah.
But online, you are a
people like this
mess.
Guy is awful. So here's what I will say. What I had to learn about online, on social media, which is, I think everybody can keep this in mind. It's I needed to know this, but it would help anybody, I think, is that people, if you disagree with people, or if, especially if you disagree, in a way that seems like you're irreverent or something like that, people are going to think that you believe the things you do intentionally to upset them. Yeah. And I think that's what's happened. I mean, if you look at both the left and the right, and I'm not going to get political, it's just this attitude of like, if you're someone on the left and people disagree with you on the right, you feel like, oh, they're trolling me. Yeah. If you're on the right, you feel like, oh, they're just so sensitive, these sensitive snowflakes. Right. And I feel like, you know, I would have people who would kind of think I was contrarian who were 10 years younger than me. So it's like, well, I didn't come up with my beliefs in order to upset you. You know what I mean? But again, this is, I think, goes back to that first impression. It's like, you don't have the luxury of people knowing where you're coming from. They're going to put you in the camp of what they've experienced before. So if I make a insensitive comment or whatever, you know, now what I've learned is, they're not going to be like, well, that was insensitive, but I bet he's not like all those other insensitive people. I bet he's just as really, you know, intellectually interesting person who's trying to, I think maybe this is kind of bad in a little bit, which is that the way that we relate to one another online seems to be kind of destructive. Yeah. But it is also the reality. Yeah. You know, you can't change that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Okay. Back to comedy. But that to say, like, watching you both on stage and online, and I feel like for, you know, those early years, there was this like, okay, this person online isn't who I admire on stage. What's going on? But it seems like in the last year, like there's been a convergence, and maybe it's just because I know you more on stage now, and I know you a little bit more anyway, that I feel like, okay, there's a maturity that has come through, and it is showing up. Like, I was really truthfully blown away by how amazing you were at that Sure Thing.
Oh, thank you.
And
I really appreciate it.
It made me, think, he's like, there's a maturity level that has come both in just how you write, but also just, you know, maybe your personal maturity has reached the stage where it's like, okay, now I can really hit my stride.
I mean, one of the things, I can't remember who said this, but part of it was like, you know, you don't if you have a relatively nuanced point that you want to make on, but you think it could be controversial, just understand it's going to be taken as controversial. Yeah. It's not going to be taken in the nuanced way. So like, I think that the other thing that like Taylor Dowdy would mention to me, and he's absolutely right, which is that like, you're a comic. Be a comic. Yeah. Your job is not to be an internet provocateur. Yeah. Or whatever, you know, and he's absolutely right. Like, and I don't think I'm alone in this. I think there's a lot of people who do a kind of damage to themselves online, and it's like people are, especially in the comedy community, people are going to watch even your comedy according to what they understand you to be like.
Yeah.
And so if you're creating this persona before they see you, you're not going to get a fair shake, and it's already hard to do that. Yeah. So you got to calm that stuff down.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that like I didn't know that it would be like that, because like so many people out there, I was on the internet with reckless abandon, and no one, before you do something where you're trying to create some kind of public persona, or dare I say like reputation or something like that,
sure.
You don't have to worry about that stuff. So, but now you do.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into your progression. You started in 2015, and you gave FPIA a chance?
Oh, I was
right away.
I started with the perfect amount of time, I think, because I was like 9 months into starting, somewhere in like that. So August 1st to early March, whatever. Maybe that's not 9 months, but it's 6 months. The point being is that like I had enough time to kind of get my legs under me a little bit, and I knew and I had talked to enough people, had been around enough to have a sense about what the contest was. And there's plenty of different opinions and feelings about it, but I got this sense like, oh, this is like a debutante thing. For new comics, it's like, oh, this is a way that nobody's seen me.
Yeah.
And the thing is that...
Talk about first impressions, right?
Well, absolutely. And I had started with Austin Smart and Eric Nimmer.
Okay.
Same time, right? And a few of those people have, it's a controversial time, but either, regardless, they were getting a lot of attention. And I didn't think I was doing a bunch worse than them on stage, but nobody was looking at me at all. So I was like, well, if I just do my best to create a decent set, then a bunch of people are going to see me, and that can't help me. And when I advanced, it definitely did that. So it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've nailed that 2 more times?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I look at all those sets and kind of hate them a little bit, but not, just because I don't think they're the best I could have done, even at the time. But yeah, it ended up, I also, like, it helps if you try to figure out what the contest, like what comedy is best going to serve it. Because like one of the things that's funny about it is it's similar to an open mic in this respect. The audience is going to figure out really quickly, like, oh, some of these people are bad. And now they're way more aware of their judgment in it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they do that intentionally or worse, but if you don't rest them assured, if that's a way to say it, that you're going to be funny or at least okay, they'll check out more quickly than they would.
Yep.
So if I get booked on a show, there's a promise from the host and the producers to the audience. Hey, this person's good. So, it might take a minute, but give them a chance. The contest is not like that. So I was like, well, I need to be funny real quick. And so since then I've always just, try to have something relatively punchy up top and then organize your set in a kind of like fluid way. And that it's served me pretty well. So yeah.
And you started Showcase.
Yeah, too
creation.
Early. Too early.
Really? Okay.
I'm one of the people that people complain about on these podcasts about like, hey, all these bad shows and well, the thing, I don't think they were talking about me specifically because I tried to have a certain kind of quality level to the shows that I would start. And the truth is that you hear people talking about bad shows and everything like that. And anytime somebody says that, I always ask, like, how many people were at this show? Like, oh, there's like 6 people in the audience. Like, that's 90% of why the show is bad.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there's all this other stuff. If you get 60 people in, together, if you can get that kind of crowd, you can do almost everything wrong. And I'm not saying it'll be a good show, but it won't, the comics will not complain about what a crappy show they were just on. They might, criticize you a lot, but so yeah, I figured out I had 2 venues where I knew I could get people there, and I started doing shows way too early. But I was also a desperate attempt to get attention. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, running theme, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the funny thing about starting shows. You think when you start, like, oh, I'll start some shows and people will say, it's like, it's the difference between a necessary and a sufficient condition. Like people, it is true if you have a show, it will make people think of you when they might not have. But if you're not funny, it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it can be a nice cherry on top, but it's not really the secret to getting booked or something like that.
So are you currently hosting something?
No, I put that. Well, actually, I'm hosting that show at Southwestern.
Okay.
Because I don't do anything. I book it, I host it, and that's it. And that is my favorite part of running a show. They produce it, they advertise it, because it's almost exclusively to Southwestern students. It's not necessarily that, but that's just who shows up or whatever. We pack it out every time, and it's fantastic. When I go to New York, I might start a show. I'll have to figure that out, but in Austin, I will not be producing another show. I was really burnt out in doing it. And I when I knew, it was like when I go on stage and I have a good set, I feel great. I feel like it's the second time I've done comedy. It's just always feels really wonderful and fresh. When I first started putting on shows, I was very proud of myself that I kind of did it and nobody really showed me how. I just kind of figured it out based on seeing how good shows work. But maybe like 6 months ago, somewhere in that, we would put on good shows and I wouldn't care. And I was like, so I don't need to be doing that. Yeah.
Okay. Show breaks. You said when you go to New York.
Oh yeah.
What's that about?
Well, I think I'm going to be moving in August. I think.
God damn it, Jered.
It might not though, but because it's financial issue and stuff like that. I mean, here's the deal. I can relate to the military because it was a similar dynamic. When I was about to get out of the military, people will, like reenlistment officers and reenlistment NCOs will talk to you and try to get you to reenlist. And the way I kind of, precluded that conversation was to say, look, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but if I get out and if I want to stay in, I would rather get out, get my education and come back as an officer. So it was sort of like, even if I wanted to stay, it would be better to leave and come back. And in a similar way, I think, don't get me wrong, everybody has a different feeling about when they should go, but a lot of people who don't go to LA and New York on the basis that it's better to stay here, like it's better to wait till you really, I almost always think it's like, well, why not leave? And then if it's as brutal as you think it is, or as you fear it is, come back. Yeah. Now you have some New York cred. You have some sense about what it's like in this larger sense, and you're back where you started, and you're doing what you're doing. But if it's the case that you should have left, you can't know that by staying here.
Right.
But again, I mean, there's some financial stuff that we've got to figure out.
Yeah.
But I'm also excited about the idea of living in New York.
Yeah.
So that's the other issue. Yeah.
And why New York versus LA?
I wanted to stand up. I mean, there's definitely advantages to LA. Sure. It's funny thing is I'd love to write, but I don't even know if I want to write for comedy writing. In other words, writing for Conan or something like that. Oh, I would never I'd never refute that offer, but it doesn't sound exciting to me, So yeah, I mean, and everybody seems to, the sense I get, and please email me if I'm wrong, is that if you want to get better at stand up and you want to do really good stand up, go to New York. If you want to be famous or work in the business, that kind of stuff, go to LA. Right. And in my head, my plan is kind of like, well, if I'm going to go to LA, I'm going to go to New York first. So I would love my act to be way stronger. And that's really what I want to do and be right now. Yeah. I'm too old to try to make it on charm. I need quality. I gotta make quality happen. And then I get
both. Come on.
Oh, I could definitely have both, but I want
team gray hair here.
Exactly. Yeah. I want, it's like a old oak table. That's what I want to be, where it's like, okay, this isn't exciting, but I appreciate the time and effort it took to be this. Yeah.
God. All right. So you're taking a break from showcasing or running shows because you really want to focus on your performing.
And there's other stuff I can do. I mean, in some sense, all those shows, I never thought they were important outside of, you're generally filling in the scene a bit. the scene never needed my shows, but I always felt like if the show is quality enough, it'll be worth everybody's time and adds just that much more to the scene. Felt the same way about hosting mics. It was like sort of like you're doing your due diligence. Right. And also it kind of created a structure to working on comedy. So, it's like if you have a thing every month and a thing every week, you can kind of use that as a kind of lattice to kind of fit your comedy in. I think in some sense, people that don't host things and don't produce things, it's very easy for them to take days and days and days and weeks off at a time.
Right.
So in some sense, doing those shows was really still about becoming a better comic and keeping myself sort of on track and stuff like that. But now I'm basically doing other stuff that's either comedy or comedy adjacent. So
yeah. Okay. Do you care to go back to podcasting at all?
I actually have a new podcast.
Oh, you do?
Super excited about it. It's called The Phantom Zone.
Oh, that's you.
That's us.
Okay.
Me and,
all right.
and us. Yeah. Okay. And I'm more proud of this podcast than almost anything I've been involved with.
Wow.
Just because I think the quality level we can always get better, and I hope to get better. Yeah. But it's me, actually my boyfriend, Noah Reed, and his friend Kayla, and she's my friend too. Don't tell her that I said we're not friends. Oh. And we talk about comics, and it's at some level a comedy podcast. I mean, in that, it's our goal that we be funny while we're doing it. And we looked at that market, and there was, I hate to describe it as a market, but we looked at all the comic podcasts out there. So when I say comic, by the way, I mean comic books.
Okay.
Because I hadn't realized that.
I'm like, wait a minute.
No.
Who are you trash talking?
So comic book superheroes. I've been a superhero fan since I was 9. I got into Thor and George Carlin the same year. 9 was a big year for me. And but we looked at all this podcast and we felt like, it was maybe 2 different kinds. There was ones that were like, they were kind of zoo crewy. They were very like just people kind of being very like, Monday morning radio, and they didn't really have much to say about comics. When they did talk about it, it would just be kind of like, this sucked, I hated this, very negative, and we don't like that. And then on the other end, there would be ones that were very sort of data driven and very boring. Because that's the thing, if you're a comic fan, you don't want to hear other people just read encyclopedic knowledge that you have. So we were like, look, if we had, the 3 of us, we were like, we kind of have chemistry. And if we apply that to talking about the things that we really love, it'll go well. And please check it out. Cool. I'm very happy about it. Yeah.
And how many episodes do you have
we
so
have
far?
About 15, 16, somewhere in that.
So I am a comic book.
Are you really?
Know nothing.
Oh, okay.
No, I know nothing.
So I think it could be, I think you could, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it because I feel like that's kind of our target market, which is like people that, would be potentially interested in comics, but feel like it's too boring or there's too much there and it's a bit intimidating or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like, we do a good job for like, neophytes.
I will check it out because there is a podcast that, I gravitated to that, because I always told myself I'm never going to listen to a podcast that breaks down a TV show or a movie or whatever. Yeah. Because I thought too data driven, too geeky, not entertaining, not fun. But I found one and I love it. And I'm just wondering if anybody else is able to replicate that formula of being fun, but also.
I think we do. And I really, really hope that we are. But like, it's one of the few things where I listen to it afterwards and I think like, I like this. Like because again, so much of doing stuff in comedy is I just want to try this just to like, so, and I feel like, Circling the Drain and Leading the Blind were both like that. It was sort of not having a strong sense, aesthetical or otherwise about like what I really wanted to do. Just like, let's just kind of get the feet wet. Yeah. This is the first time where I'm like, no, this is, I want to show people this. Yeah. Even my stand up, I'm just getting to the point where I'm like, yeah, you should see me do a stand up. You know what I mean?
Oh, gosh. All right. Have you, I know you felt good about that first time that you were on a stage, but have you had like a really bright, like light bulb moment where you're like, I'm so happy I'm doing this. I'm so happy that I've chased after this.
I've had a few moments. I mean, the first time I did well on stage where the whole set was good, and I'm talking about open mic, very low level, but it's a big, when you do 4 minutes or 3.5 minutes or something like that, and everything works and it feels like a fluid thing, you feel like a comic, and Sam Harder was there and said I did a good job, so that had to be great because the guy's not doling out
those compliments. No.
So that felt good, and like the FPIA thing where that was the final thing where I was like, okay, I can allow myself to say I'm doing this. I was committed really before that, but like after I advanced and I saw it said and people said I did a good job, it felt like, okay, this is still very low level, but there's nothing fundamentally wrong about this. It's like, this must be kind of on the right track. And that it was like, okay, it was like, this is the putty that I can make, I can become a comic with. And I think that was, I could kind of, and I got joke of the night. It was me and LaShonda Lester and Justin Hicks. We're the ones that advanced. And LaShonda, again, God rest her soul, it was one of the most amazing comics I have ever gotten to see. Also, I have to say, when I saw her do comedy at Buzzmill for the first time, I'd never even really heard of her. I just, so I didn't know what I was in for. And it was, to me, as funny as anything I had ever seen, and I was like, oh shit, Austin comedy is just real. But to be next to her and Justin Hicks, a guy who I respect very much and who I had seen, we started around the same time, and I just seen his dedication and hard work. To be next to those two, that I was like, okay, I feel like I kind of belong. I felt like it was a start of the feeling of belonging or whatever. And at that point, that was the aha moment in that way. Yeah.
Nice. It's nice to share with those two people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The contest generally changed my mind about it, like the mention of respect I had for comedy after that contest. And I think it's funny because people talk shit about that contest, and if you take it as some definitive, if you've advanced, that means you're good. If you don't, you're bad. If you read it that way, then of course it's awful. Yeah. But what I got to see was, like I said, people like, I'm trying to think, and it's all 3 years it's always been this way, where you get to see, like, last year, Michael Good's set, there was this moment where it was like, oh, he's at another level now. Like, it was just, cause these things slowly accrete. Yeah. But it's this moment where it's like, oh, he's jumped up. Now he is at a different level than he was last year. Yeah. I saw Joey Zimmerman destroy. I saw Andrew Dismukes. I mean, so many people I could mention, but you really don't get to see your friends operate at that level except for something like the contest where they're in front of 300 people and they're just absolutely owning the stage. It's crazy. Yeah.
I think the people who trash FPIA, and if you've heard enough episodes, you know that I love to geek out about FPIA and where somebody falls. But I think
with you.
I think the people that end up trashing it, maybe the people who don't realize there's so much to learn from just that experience. And I think it is, like you said, just being on that stage, getting a tape, and seeing what your peers are doing in this basically a really stressful situation.
And by the way, exactly. And I'm aware that I am, I've advanced each time. So it's sort of like, of course, if you feel like you do well, then it's great. Yeah. And it's like if the show that books you really understands talent and the show that doesn't are a bunch of assholes. Yeah. and so I get that. And I will say the contest in some sense is the best for two kinds of people in the scene, I think. It's good for everybody, but it's the best for people who are very close to being in the finals or are going to be in the finals. It's a great showcase for them. They make a lot of connections and stuff. And it's really good for new comics that have promise because they can show everybody, like, I mean, you actually mentioned something earlier, which, it's hard to do, but I think you should do, is that at mics, you should be working. And, but what that means is that you're going to have bad sets where you're trying to work on new stuff. And some people are not going to know what you're capable of because they're just going to see you working on, really just having kind of mediocre stuff. And so if you're the person who's trying to do that first year, but then you take all the stuff that kind of works, you put it all together for that first 6 minutes and you knock everybody's socks off. It's, it's a great moment to show the comic community like, no, I'm good. I didn't say anything before because I was trying to be good, but now I am good. Look at that. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna go into a little bit of therapy again.
Sure, let's do it.
Because I feel like you're so much fun, and I feel like you're not going to take any offense by my questions.
Yeah.
All right, we spent so much of our first few minutes talking about being gay and the war and signing up for the Army. You do make that part of your stage presence, and you've
sure.
okay. So you're at year 3 now.
Yeah.
4. Terrible at math. Year 4. So is there any part of you that says, I don't want to rely on those things that were kind of, I mean, I'm going to say this and they're part of my comfort because they're who I am, and I'm trying to share who I am on a stage because that makes me comfortable. But is there any part of you that says, I'm trying to do something different and I don't want to rely on it?
The funny thing, the irony there is that like it took me so long to say it, to be like, I'm gay. And now I do it way too much. I mean, so I feel a few ways about that. One, any joke I write that doesn't involve, especially being gay, I am really happy about because of that. Because the thing is that the disingenuous nature of my act, and I can kind of explain why it is the way it is that I don't really think about being gay that much, and I don't really, outside of like these more kind of biographical kind of moments, I don't really talk about it that much, and I feel so distant from gay culture in terms of interpreting the world. And I don't mean that as judgment. I just kind of like came out late and didn't go to bars a lot. So that, you know, but the thing is that I kind of feel like I'm at a point where if I think of a funny thing, I can't afford to be judgmental about that funny thing. So if I think of a joke about being in the Army or being gay, in other words, it would be one thing if I had all this other stuff that I wasn't doing because I was like, well, people have to know I'm gay. That's the thing I do.
Yeah.
It would be one thing, but it's like if I write a joke and it works and it feels strong, it's like I kind of just have to do that. And then I think later on, when I have a body of material, I can be more discerning about, let me cut this stuff out a little bit more and focus more on this. But yeah, that's kind of how I look at it.
I'll translate for myself what I think happens in those first few years. You have certain crutches, and crutches is not the right word that I would choose to describe your situation.
Yeah.
But you have conventions that you stick to, and then you start to get really, really good, and that's when you kind of take off the training wheels and you're able to expand and really work on a wider variety of skills.
I think that's probably true. I also think there's an issue of like credibility, and a cheap way to do credibility is, hey, I can talk about the thing I'm about to talk about because I am that thing. But then later on, your comedy chops become your credibility.
Yeah,
you're like I'm going to do this joke for you. Isn't that funny? So see, I can handle this kind of stuff. What's funny is that I almost always do a joke in my act that's not about me being gay or a veteran. Almost to like the first 2 jokes usually, just to prove to myself, like, no, it's the comedy. Yeah. It's the writing.
Yeah.
And then, but then the other thing is I find that the other stuff that I would really like to talk about is just like, I haven't found a way to make it funny yet, or not enough, or not often enough. So, and I'm a big fan of like, you have to get the chops and the structure down before you really get to sort of decide like, this is the subject I want to talk about. I cannot wait to get there, but I feel like as of yet, if I can make a joke work, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah. This will be really relatable to the listening audience, but it's like you can't get to advanced calculus until you nail calculus.
Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I have that tattooed on my lower back. I get it.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Is there anything that scares you, Jered?
I don't know. I mean, horses? No, I'm just saying. Kind of. I don't know. I think what usually scares me is stuff like not what's the word? Not impotence. Like it's more like I'll fall short because of something that I kind of didn't do. Like I didn't have the strength to do it because I'm not afraid to just like be an obscure comic for 30 years and then die. I'm really not. I mean, I'm like, I don't want that. But I think at one point, like maybe a year and a half ago or something like that, I was like, okay, I think I can I was really happy with like my booking where I had a couple of good shows or something, but I was at work and I was like, I think I could just pull espresso and do jokes till I'm dead. I think I could do that. If nothing else, this is a life I could do. But you know, it's like you don't want to feel like, oh, I could have written the book. I just didn't do it. Mm-hmm. That's a goal later on, as I'd like to write a book or something like that. But I don't want it to be that, you know, I didn't just because like, I just put it off. I didn't, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. You know, I don't feel old at all, but I feel like I'm old enough that like 30 years isn't an insanely long time to me, but it's maybe a realistic period of time to say this is what my career's going to be in. And I feel like, okay, I don't want to waste that time. You know, that doesn't mean hurrying. That doesn't mean rushing things. But what it does mean is not having the attitude like time is just this endless commodity or something like that. Yeah. So I think, maybe that's a good way to say it. I think wasting time is probably a fear I have. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. We're going to start winding down.
Speaking of which, I got to go now.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
I mean, we've hit a lot of stuff. I don't know. I think we're good. I mean, I do want to say this, which is that like, I'm seeing this trend now. Maybe it's always been this way in the scene, where, and some of my best friends are in Austin comedy. And one of my favorite things to do is just go to mics that aren't even good, but just the hang. I just love it. Right. And I love that it's lateral. Like you said we could curse, right?
Yes, of course.
I think it's good to network. And I'm just getting to the point now where I've thought more about, okay, I can maybe start thinking more about selling my act or thinking more about like trying to get booked at places, not just getting better. But my primary focus is on comedy and trying to be a better comic and a better writer and a better performer. But I hate star fuckers. And I hate people that think that the way that you succeed in comedy is you find somebody who's at a higher level, you try to be their friend, and then they'll help you out, which is, it's not in part the worst thing in the world, right? Yeah. But I'm seeing this trend lately where it's like you're not good on stage and you need to get good on stage. Yeah. Don't just smoke weed with 4 funny people. And because I think I see this and I think they think they're getting ahead this way. And the reason if the people I'm thinking of, if they weren't funny, it would be, I don't care. Yeah. Who cares? But I see these people that I think have a lot of potential, but they feel like, well, if I get in the right clique, the right friend group, that's how I'm gonna be respected. It's like, no, you're just gonna be the unfunny person in that group. So don't do that. I don't know why I felt like I needed to do a PSA, but yeah.
Just work it out on stage.
Yeah. Absolutely. Be funny. Learn how to write a joke. That's
Yeah, we could definitely do another hour talking about that whole notion.
I'll say this, and because I think it's in some sense a good way to sum it up, which is that for good or bad, it is really easy to be distracted by the kinds of social goings on, and when I say good or bad, I mean whether it's like, oh, isn't comedy really just about doing cocaine with your friends? Or on the other end, the sort of like, nobody likes me and I just wish if it's everything gets corrected or at least deeply, profoundly helped by just getting better at comedy. Right. It's like, so if you're a struggling open mic comic like we all are, and you have that feeling like, why this and why that and why can't I get booked on this show, and all of it is just work on your act. Yeah. The better you get, all that kind of stuff. In the long run. Thank you. That's what I was like. It's not long road, but it feels like one. No, but in the long run, I do think, it moves towards merit. Nobody crushes it and doesn't get booked. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
I think so. I agree. All right. Well, we're here.
We are here.
We are at the end.
Oh, no.
Here's the question that you're already prepared for.
Not really.
Okay, good.
Because it only gave me more time to debate back and forth what I would say.
One word to describe your future.
It's like no matter what I say, I'm just full of shit. But I'm gonna say this because I feel like it's something I know. Persistent. That's what my future is. I'm gonna keep going.
Which is fantastic, given, and it's still like front of mind. You talking about we're seeking discipline.
Yeah, absolutely.
And persistence to me is synonymous with discipline.
Yeah, and I think of all the people, I'm not a fan of this guy, but like Bill Maher has this quote. I mean, I don't really dislike him either, to be fair, but has this quote about how when he started doing comedy, it's like everybody was a comic. Like the dentist would be also doing that. But it's like a marathon. It's like in the first few miles, everybody's there. Yeah. You get to mile 22 and it's very cleared out. And I feel that way, which is that like this is not the kind of thing that you go into not realizing like it just might take a decade to get even to really get in the groove and start running. Now, I'm not trying to send a message that like, hey, no matter how bad you are, just keep going and it gets better. But I feel like, I just have to look at it like it's like a way of being where it's like, I'm just trying to get fluent in the language of comedy, so to speak. And that might take years and years and years, but I love doing it. So that should be enough. Yeah.
Very good. Well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham Presents Jered McCorkle. We did it.
Yeah.
Tell us where we can find you on social media and tell us about upcoming shows.
Okay. So, it's just at Jered McCorkle. That's my Twitter because I'm not creative at all.
Just had this joke
I'm not a social media dude. So it's like, it's just right across the plate. And then it's thephantomzonepod.com. That's our website. Okay. You can find it on anywhere they have podcast, iTunes. We recommend that, but the Stitcher, Spotify, all that kind of stuff. Check us out.
All right. Very good. We hope you've enjoyed learning about how Jered got to be the comedic genius that you heard today just as much as I have. Be sure to visit comedywham.com. Give us a follow on Twitter or Instagram at Comedy Wham and like our Facebook page. You can listen to past interviews on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Same place that you can listen to Phantom Zone Podcast. And please review us while you're at it.
Can I add one?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. It's Phantom Zone with an F. That's very important.
Yes. That's
very important. Because as in fan, you're a fan, I'm a fan. Okay, great. Sorry.
This has been Comedy Wham Presents Jered McCorkle. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Jered.
Thank you.